Okay, just imagine this is you. You love giant corporations and Minecraft. Jesus Christ, do I have the game for you. One day, in the beautiful land of Stockholm, California, the ghost of Steve Jobs and the ghost of Marcus Person's career accidentally signed a contract stating that Mojang would develop a version of Minecraft that runs on an Apple TV. And not only that, but also, Mojang had to pretend they gave a shit about their community. Oh, it was just terrible. But the worst part of it all, Mojang had to work tirelessly to make an iOS game run on an operating system derived from iOS. It was previously thought impossible by the greatest minds in computer programming, but Mojang proved them wrong on December 19th, 2016, when Minecraft Apple TV Edition launched for this magical black box. As far as the history of this version goes, if you want a history lesson on it, check out my previous video documenting its release, disappearance, and preservation. In fact, I'd say that you really should watch that video to understand what's going on here. But in today's video, I want to talk about the gameplay, having finally got it installed on an Apple TV. So without wasting any time, here it is. Wow, there it is. Let's talk about this icon. Apple TV icons work in layers. Developers are encouraged by Apple to use layers when making their icons for Apple TV to add a sense of depth. This design detail also goes for Apple Vision Pro. As you can see here on the home screen, the logo is a layer above the grass block texture. It's a very subtle detail, but it's cool if you notice it. tvOS also features a unique graphic for apps that are on the top of the dock. It's weird that this banner is never seen by the majority of users since you probably wouldn't be keeping Minecraft at the top of your home screen. To play this game, you have to sign into an iCloud account. None of this game's save data is stored locally, so if you don't have an iCloud account, your worlds are going to be lost in purgatory. Not that you can make any anyway, since you can't do anything without signing in. Speaking of signing in, Microsoft account. If you sign in, you can add this game to your achievements list on Xbox, just in case you don't have enough versions of Minecraft in your library. This game is of course based on Minecraft at the time called Pocket Edition, so a lot of the UI is exactly the same as it was on the 1.1.5 version of Pocket Edition, but there are some differences and I'll get into more detail about that later. The store is here for skins, but of course it doesn't work anymore since support for this version ended 6 years ago. This is probably one of the most depressing things Microsoft has done since they dropped that bomb on Japan. Anyway, you've got all your settings and button mapping and all that jazz, and even patch notes that don't exist. The render distance goes up to 20 chunks, which is pretty impressive for a TV box. You've got all your video settings here, and let me tell you something. What the fuck is this? You can change the UI scale and make it look like it was designed by morons. The default UI is perfectly fine to begin with, but if it was any smaller, it would probably suck. I don't know what kind of freak would set the UI to this. Maybe if you have a 300-inch TV, I could see it, but otherwise, I would just call you a stupid idiot for using this setting. And if you're shocked by this, just wait till you see the setting in-game. Moving on to the main feature, creating a world is just like creating a world in literally any other version of Minecraft, which is really mind-blowing because I was expecting something completely different and unique that was like nothing else I've ever seen before in my entire life. You can create and join a realm, just kidding, no you can't. You can create and join a world and get all them classic 2018 Pocket Edition settings. Now, I don't really need to talk about these, but here's something worth noting. If you've seen my worst versions of Minecraft video, you'll know how I talked about how every version has their own keyboard UI depending on the platform they're on. And of course, Apple TV has its own pop-up keyboard UI too. Here's the thing. It doesn't work. You can't control the keys. You can try the Apple TV remote, you can try another Apple TV remote, you can try a third Apple TV remote, you can try the original Apple TV remote, you can try a fifth Apple TV remote, and you can even try the Nimbus controller. No dice. Any way you look at it, you're fucked. Well, there is another option actually. If you get a wireless Bluetooth keyboard and connect it to the Apple TV, you can actually type. Now that's what I call beating the system. But you still can't hit enter. You can type your gay little heart out, but you'll never be good enough to hit that enter key. Why is it like this? I got no fucking clue. If you were holding a gun to my head, I'd probably shit myself. But if you were holding a gun to my head and asked me why it's doing this, I'd probably guess that it's because the game was developed for an older version of tvOS, and the system isn't communicating properly with the application. I've got good news though. If you use the Bluetooth keyboard to type whatever you want, and then click the menu button on a remote to close the keyboard UI, the text you entered will input into the text box, despite not having hit the enter key. And just when I was beginning to think God isn't real. Anyway, aside from all the basic world options, there's nothing of note going on here, except the multiplayer tab. Now, since Microsoft doesn't support this version anymore, you'd probably assume you're stuck playing solo, right? Well, I'll get into that in a few. For now, let's start generating a world. And once we're in, wow, here it is. It's unlike anything I've ever seen before in my entire life. It's truly amazing how they were able to get what is essentially an iOS game to run on a device that is almost literally iOS. It makes you wonder how there's any room left for other miracles in this world. In all seriousness for a moment, I gotta say, the first thing I immediately noticed was the rather impressive frame rate. It's pretty consistently running at 60 FPS. Of course it has its occasional and subtle frame drops, but after all, it is Bedrock Edition. But it seriously is impressive to see it running so smoothly on a dinky little TV box. specs. Apple TV games can get pretty impressive looking thanks to Apple's A series of chips. In a time where Bedrock on Nintendo Switch runs at the same speed of a person with no legs, a consistent 60 on this little thing here is pretty bonkers. Anyway, so what's the gameplay like? Well, it might surprise you to hear this, but it's Minecraft. Literally Minecraft. Yeah, I know, but is there anything about it that makes it shitty? Well, of course there is. I'd like to now talk about all the shitty little things and annoyances exclusive to this version. First of all, a few minutes ago I introduced you to the fact that the keyboard doesn't work, right? Remember that? Good times. Well, of course then if you use a Bluetooth keyboard and then hit the menu button, you can get around that. But it doesn't apply to the in-game chat. No matter what, you can't enjoy typing in the chat and sharing your thoughts with the server because hitting the menu button just cancels the text entirely. It's a real pain in the ass. And you know what's stupid? It doesn't apply to signs. You can use signs by using that trick, but not the in-game chat. What force is coming up with these rules? You can hit the menu button to cancel the text prompt and keep any text input in menu boxes and signs, but specifically not the in-game chat. What the hell is that? But okay, that one there is probably the result of some OS issue, or maybe the way I installed it, so I'm gonna let that one slide. When playing multiplayer in a world, don't ever do anything that isn't playing the game. You will accidentally kick everyone you know and love from the game. Open up the quick menu, you've been kicked. Close the app for a second, you've been kicked. Let the Apple TV start its screensaver, fuck you, you've been kicked. Asshole. So if you do anything that takes you out of the app for any amount of time whatsoever, you better resend those invitations. And it might not sound like a big deal, but it's a serious pain in the ass. Imagine you just want to check the time, or you need to leave the app to quickly add a keyboard in settings. Or maybe you just have to go take a piss and don't realize you have your Apple TV set to go to standby after 3 minutes. It's fucking annoying. Now, let's talk about saving data. This is, as far to my knowledge, the only version of Minecraft I have ever heard of that does not let you, in any way, shape, or form, store save data locally. I don't know of any other version that requires you to store worlds in the cloud. And if you can't foresee some problems occurring there, well, buckle in. First of all, of course there's the annoyance of it being literally impossible to play this game without an internet connection. Obviously, if you have an Apple TV, most things on it require the internet, aside from any media you've downloaded. But even if you have a shoddy internet connection, expect to just be constantly interrupted by this message here, even though you have to download the world before playing in it. And by far my favorite side effect of worlds being stored in the cloud, don't be surprised if you accidentally corrupt your save data. First of all, if you close out of the game too soon or your power goes out for whatever reason, you can kiss all your progress goodbye. From what I understand, the world data in the cloud isn't updated until after you close the world, and then depending on the speed of your internet, it uploads. So if you close your world and then close the game too quickly, nothing will be saved. I had this happen to me after playing for over 3 hours. Such a great side effect of iCloud saves, really just makes you want to kill yourself. And secondly, if you feel so inclined as to change the Microsoft account you're using and then load one of your iCloud worlds, it doesn't take too much messing around to completely corrupt the world and make it crash your game. My cockhouse is now completely lost thanks to this. And you know the best part? I can't access any of my save data to try to recover it. I can't download it from iCloud, and of course I can't pull it from my Apple TV. I can't even copy the world in-game. No matter how much that cockhouse meant to you, it's just gone and it's never coming back. All thanks to the morons at Mojang who decided to keep data in the cloud. To be completely fair, at the time this version came out, the newest Apple TVs only came in 32GB and 64GB variations, and with infinite worlds, the file sizes could get pretty big. That being said, base iCloud accounts only get 5GB of free storage, and most of that would probably already be used for backups and whatnot. So that actually makes less sense than I originally thought. I don't get the thought process here. It's like when making this game, they only went with the dumbest choice they could come up with. And strangely enough, just to make their decision less intelligible, the world data is actually downloaded to your Apple TV when you played in said world. When you go back to your world list after launching it, you can actually see that the world size has increased from 0MB to whatever the size of the world is. So what the fuck is the point of keeping it all in iCloud? It's like they tried to waste as much energy and space in any way they could possibly think of. And when you close the game and launch back in, the world data is wiped locally and has to be downloaded again. Who comes up with this shit? It's mind-blowing. One can only aspire to develop a game this poorly. Well, I gotta pause for a second for a little Apple developer lesson. tvOS only allows applications to store up to 512KB of data locally. Any app can store more data than that, but any data beyond that 512KB can be deleted automatically by tvOS at any time for whatever reason. Why is it like that? Fucking God only knows. Because Apple felt like it, I guess. This has been your Apple developer lesson for today's video. And regardless of whether or not your world data is downloaded in any given session, don't think for even a second you can extract your world data. Absolutely not, you asswipe. You'll never get your worlds off this thing. Because remember, not only can you not freely browse files in the majority of paths in the Apple TV's internal storage, but you can't so much as download your iCloud save data, let alone browse it. The only way it was ever possible to get a world off this thing would have been when it was the most recent version of Bedrock and realms were still supported on it. At that point, you could have uploaded your world to a realm and then downloaded it from another device. Other than that, good luck. Your worlds are trapped in Apple's magical black box. Remember earlier I talked about the goofy-ass UI choices? Well, keep in mind that the game defaults to the largest option, so now take a look at the hotbar. It's not terrible, but that's as big as it gets, not a pixel bigger. If you're mentally ill, you can make it smaller, and okay, you know what? This is like a joke. What in God's name is the point of this? Who needs the hotbar to be this small? I can't imagine any scenario where this makes sense. Is this some kind of joke? Here's something great. You remember in Console Legacy how you could choose classic crafting and not have to go through the crafting menu like normal? Instead, you could just craft manually like an old Java edition? Well, how would you like to do that without a choice? There is no crafting menu in this game, and I have no clue why. Only classic crafting. There's no options in the menu or anything like that. This is just how you play. I have no clue why. And this really couples well with the god-awful menu controls. I can't really describe it, but if you were playing this game right now, you would immediately recognize the unresponsive and puzzlingly shitty inventory controls. All done with a highlighter, no cursor. Other than that, it's Bedrock. It's got all the Bedrock features and charms, something annoying and poorly programmed for everyone to enjoy. It definitely runs better and more consistently than modern Bedrock though, which is pretty sad. But now, let's say, for some ungodly reason, you get into playing this game. And let's say you want to get all them achievements. Too bad, asshole, you can't. According to someone who reached out to me, in the final update for this game, 3 achievements were broken and are impossible to get. And in my testing, they're right. You just can't 100% this game because Mojang's developers are just so talented and care so much that they broke the game and never bothered to fix it. That's terrific. Since you can sign in with your Microsoft account, your achievements are linked in and they even show up on your Xbox profile. It was actually brought to my attention that this game is actually infamous in the Xbox achievement hunting community for being an absolute fucking nightmare to deal with since it's so rare and broken. And of course, being that it shows up on your Xbox profile, if you were to 100% all Xbox games like some people out there try to do, this game would be on that list. Speaking of getting all the achievements, one of Minecraft's most niche achievements is Diamonds to You. This achievement, of course, is the only one in the vanilla game to require you to play in multiplayer. That being said, can you get this one in this game? Well, yes you can. Playing multiplayer with this game isn't the biggest challenge in the world. All you need is another version of Bedrock on update 1.1.5. And if you have an Android, finding an APK of it and installing it is extremely easy. You can still play multiplayer over a LAN connection across all the devices that had 1.1.5. There's nothing terribly special about multiplayer here apart from getting kicked from the server if the host does anything outside the game like I talked about before. Now, I know what you might be wondering. Can you still, in today's day and age, have 2 Apple TVs with 2 copies of the game and 2 controllers and play Minecraft Apple TV Edition with other Apple TV players? Well, in theory, absolutely, why not? If you can still do multiplayer with Apple TV via iOS and Android, why wouldn't you be able to use another Apple TV? Sadly, I only have one Apple TV capable of installing this game, so I can't test that out. Well, I spent $60 on another old Apple TV to see if it would actually work. I found another one that's capable of TrollStore, and it's on tvOS 14.4. I set it up, and I actually found that the method for installing TrollStore is different on devices 14.9 and below. But anyway, with Minecraft installed on a second Apple TV, is Apple TV multiplayer possible? Well, yeah, I mean, there really wasn't that much doubt it wouldn't, but it's pretty cool to see Apple TV like this. It feels like something that's never been done before, like pigs flying, or Microsoft not selling spyware. It's an indescribable feeling that can't be described, like the feeling you get when painting a wall or when cleaning a fork. It's equally as mind-blowing. Speaking of mind-blowing, this piece of trivia I'm about to drop on you is going to have you speechless for at least 9 minutes. If you use a newer Nimbus controller with additional menu buttons, this right button here can be used to pause the game instead of the center menu button. My apologies if that epic factoid just blew your dick off, but I thought it was worth sharing. What does Microsoft love more than your data? That's right, your money. There were quite a few DLC packs available at the time 1.1.5 came out, and of course, since the store is no longer available, you can't get any of it. When this game initially launched, several pieces of DLC were included for free with your purchase, kinda like how the Nintendo versions of Minecraft always came with a bunch of those classic DLC packs. But if you install the game through TrollStore, you aren't treated to those amenities. Well, actually, every piece of DLC available in the Apple TV Edition's final release is actually baked into the game. It all exists in the game's code and doesn't need to be downloaded from some server, so I imagine imagine if you did some digging around in the code, you could probably dig them all out. I've been talking about since the last video on this topic that today, unless you bought Minecraft Apple TV Edition when it was available, the only way you can install it is through Troll Store. Well, that's not entirely true. Let me explain. And at this point, if you haven't seen the previous video on this game, consider checking it out now because a lot of what I'm about to get into isn't going to make any sense. In that video, I said that this game has only been preserved in the TIPA format, and that despite claims that TIPA and IPA files are the same thing but with different extensions, I found that they are somehow different. But that wasn't exactly the case. While they literally are different files, there isn't actually any difference to the code inside them. The only purpose in changing the IPA extension to TIPA is so that you can airdrop, which isn't always possible with regular IPA files. Why do you need to airdrop it? Well, simple. If you're extracting an application, especially an Apple TV application, when you extract it via Troll Store, the easiest way to get the file to another device is by airdropping it. That's basically all there is to it. But hold on. Since a TIPA and an IPA file are the same thing, why can you only install it through Troll Store, not Xcode like other apps? Well, you actually can. See, when it comes to Xcode, anyone can hop into it and test apps they develop, but there are some limitations. Some developer features you can put in your app are locked behind the Apple Developer Program. The Apple Developer Program is a subscription that costs $99 a year and gives you full access to the complete toolset of Xcode features. One of those features being the integration of iCloud in your app. And of course, Minecraft Apple TV Edition requires the use of your iCloud account. So in summary, if you paid $99 for Apple's developer program, you would then be able to install this game on your Apple TV without Troll Store. Otherwise, you'll just get an error. But what about installing this game without Troll Store or that developer crap? Is it possible to just install it on a normal Apple TV with nothing more than a basic Xcode account? Well, to answer that question, I'm gonna need some help from people who actually know what they're talking about. And for someone who knows what they're actually talking about, I'm gonna have to go to the place this whole thing started. It's this guy from the iOS Gods thread. DXCool223, the original guy who suggested to Jeff to rip his Minecraft IPA from his Apple TV and share it with the world. If it wasn't for DX, this IPA would probably be chilling on Jeff's Apple TV until we all died. So, doing the smallest amount of research, I found DX and sent him a DM and waited. While at 1:49 a.m., while I was pondering my orb, I got my answer. No, it's impossible. Because of the way Apple's CloudKit is designed, mixed with some of that good old A-word stubbornness, this game just won't function without that fun $99 subscription. As if developing for Apple so they can make money off of you isn't enough, they need another $100 from you just for the hell of it. That way Johnny Ive can take his wife out to dinner once a year. Well, after a sad conclusion, 6 hours later, DX had informed me that he had managed to install the game for free via Xcode, but the game just keeps crashing. He did this by putting his magical black box in MDM mode and grabbing the IPA while it was still downloading from the App Store. And when you have to do something as ridiculous as that just to get the game to crash as soon as it boots, you know you're about to have a fight to the death with unexplainable bullshit. In the Apple jailbreaking community, there's a pretty well-known app called App Store++. App Store++ lets you go into the App Store and downgrade any app you own to an older version that's still up on Apple's servers. Sadly, since I don't own this game, I wouldn't be able to downgrade it. How disgusting. But alas, I brought it up to DX, and he does own the game. But sadly, literally every version except the last has been completely removed from Apple's servers. Absolutely terrific. DX has been a huge help with getting a lot of technical information from this game, and if you appreciate preservation efforts like this, I highly recommend you check him out on Twitter. But basically, since this game was delisted from the App Store, none of its versions are kept on Apple's servers except for the final one. So as far as getting older versions goes, it's extremely likely that the only copies of older versions of this game are rotting somewhere on Mojang's servers right now, especially since Apple doesn't even have them anymore. And remember how I said that in the final release of this game, Mojang broke 3 achievements and just never fixed them? Well, your only shot at unlocking those achievements would have been by playing on an older version, so thankfully because of Apple and Mojang's joint efforts subsequently yanking this game from history, your chances of completing this game have gone from impossible to completely buttfuck impossible. Unless you're willing to dig through every line of code in this game and fix it yourself, and still manage to get it to install and run properly after all that, which you're not going to by the way, your chances of getting these achievements are somewhere between zilch and nada. DX continued to work his fucking ass off trying to get this game to work with Xcode, doing some incredibly complicated looking shit that I can only pretend to have any clue about. He tried for hours and hours trying to get this game to work for all you weird ass people with cool hair who want to give this version a try, but sadly after days of digging through code and avoiding police, we came to the sad conclusion that installing this game with a free Xcode account is impossible. We were really frustrated by this, knowing that almost 9 people would be mildly bothered by this. Well, that's not really where it ends. A few days later, DX started reaching out to some other people he knew, asking for help to crack this piece of shit app. Days more of digging through code and wanting to die, the conclusion was reached once more that the IPA cannot be installed through basic Xcode. It was frustrating, it was depressing, but overall I got to speak with a lot of cool people from the iOS Gods forums. And most of all, I learned a lot from DX, and I would have been in the dark with a blindfold and a glass eye without his help. But just to put this case to rest, I got in contact with one last person. The one person who could confirm and put the final nail in the coffin. Because if anyone would have known, it was him. Meet Opa334, the developer and creator of TrollStore. One of the most important people in Apple jailbreaking, responsible for easily one of the most groundbreaking pieces of software in all Screw Tim Cookness. And after a few days of discussion, he too came to the conclusion that it's impossible. It just can't happen without a paid dev account or a troll store. A sad story, but at least the door is closed. There's no doubt in anyone's mind that installing the game through basic Xcode is completely impossible. In theory, if you modified the game and removed all the iCloud stuff from it, you'd then be able to install it without a dev account or troll store, but if you did that, then there would be no way to save your world data. And since you can't store more than 512 kilobytes of app data on an Apple TV, you'd have to figure out how to store the app data on some external drive or another cloud service or something, and at that point, you're better off just dying or joining the army or something. After 2 weeks of multiple people in the community taking a shot at this crap, I can 100% confirm that it's not happening. TrollStore's support window is really small and nothing's gonna work except having an Apple TV with a good version of tvOS. You can't downgrade to a signed firmware and then update to a newer version from there, since the only signed firmware you can upgrade to is the most recent version of tvOS directly from Apple's servers. You could downgrade your firmware if you had something like Future Restore set up to archive all your signed OS versions, but if you haven't been doing that for the past couple of years, then it's not happening. TrollStore's support window is really small and pretty much nothing's gonna work except having an Apple TV with a good version of tvOS. But as far as needing an older Apple TV goes, I got good news. This new method works on any Apple TV HD running any version of tvOS 15.0 and above, including the most recent version, 17.5. It technically works on the first generation of Apple TV 4Ks, but it's pretty buggy and might break your black box, so you're best just sticking with an HD. Anything newer than that won't work, so if you're interested in trying this version out, check out DX's video tutorial on jailbreaking newer devices. It makes this game a lot more accessible, despite there being no way to install it through the unpaid version of Xcode. DX and I also spoke about the DLC for this game and if it was possible to unlock it. Well, in the 2-week period he spent poking at this game, he managed to mess around with the DLC, and while it's impossible to hack the game and unlock all the DLC skins, it's super easy to just modify the game and change the default skins to any DLC skin or any skin you find online, as a matter of fact. We spent some time dicking around with it, and were baffled by how stupidly easy it is to just not pay for the DLC but get access to all of it anyway. Since all the DLC was included in the game itself and wasn't separate content that needed to be downloaded from some server, anyone can just open the game file in Notepad and take any DLC skins and make them their own. It's always nice seeing giant companies that care so much about making the inner workings of software so hidden from the user do shit as unfathomably stupid as this. Well, that's Minecraft Apple TV Edition for you. The rarest version of Minecraft and also probably the biggest failure of any Minecraft release. A version barely documented at all with almost no gameplay of it anywhere. The only version of Minecraft that exclusively uses the cloud for save data. One of a few versions with a physical release that only comes with a game code. A short-lived version only beaten by 2 other games. The last version of Bedrock with the Editions title in the name. And above all, the final piece of Minecraft release history comfortably rotting on Apple's not really that magical black box. While I wouldn't say this version is the most forgotten version of Minecraft, I'd probably give that title to Minecraft for Fire Phone, which, as far to my knowledge, has literally no documentation anywhere online besides a mention on the Minecraft Wiki's Bedrock page. It's definitely the most interesting version that doesn't really have a following. If you're interested in playing this version, check out the link in the description where you can get your hands on some downloads and watch DX's installation tutorial. And if you got any entertainment out of this video, head to Twitter and send a thanks to Jeff, DX, and Opa334, who helped out big time on this video and Apple TV Edition's preservation. If you're looking for a great way to waste your time, congratulations, you've stoned 2 birds at once. This video and this game have done a great job at that, and in the famous words of the Denny's fry cook I'm holding at gunpoint, please stop. DX Cool was an unbelievably huge help, and I can't thank him enough. It's been an amazing time working with him, and his preservation efforts are immeasurable. If you were ever going to give someone a thanks, this is the guy. I can't begin to describe how much of this was possible solely because of him. Like I did, I hope you've learned something watching this video, but I severely doubt that. With Minecraft finally preserved, I'm going to step back from the series for a bit, put my controller down, and try something new like heroin. I'm Bearman, and I've been wasting your time. Thanks for watching.